What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with Enrico from Hideous Divinity. Great to be able to talk with you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
Nice
it,
to see you.
it's great to be able to talk to you. You know, the tour that you were on with Vitriol and Abysmal Dawn and Vader was one of the final shows that we got to see before the apocalypse. So talking with
Oh,
you makes me think of better days at the moment. Leave it to a death metal band to remind me of that.
yes, I can remember when we were in US and in Italy, everything was already exploding, and we heard these strange stories from our families, and they were saying, "Oh, it's this virus is spreading, it's terrible." And when we came back in Italy, when we arrived in Rome, we were not expecting all that fucked up situation because in Italy it was already a hard situation, and in very few days, we experienced this huge lockdown and all the problems. Then all the rest of the world started to face. So it was pretty strange for us. Came back from a situation where you actually were in the middle of two, three, 400 people hugging everyone, spitting on everyone, and then masks, distance, and the lockdown. Well, it still twists my mind to think about it. Yes,
Yeah.
it was a very strong impact with the situation.
Yep, it was the last mosh pit that night at Warsaw in Brooklyn. So,
My
but
God.
the last mosh pit. But luckily, we're getting some good news. We do have some new Hideous Divinity coming. We got the LV426 EP. Is this meant to kind of serve as like maybe a good way to hold people over while we wait for a full length follow up to Simulacrum, or is this just kind of like a one off sort of standout thing for Hideous Divinity?
Well, actually, in this strange situation, we just started wondering what is the best thing to do in order to keep connection with our fans and to still continue to produce music and to produce art that is the center of all the things we do. So for sure, it is not. This is not the time to promote the music you already done. In fact, when we came back in Europe, we were supposed to tour Europe with Terrorizer in a couple of weeks, and then everything just disappeared. So the live promotion for Simulacrum just stopped with the very first tour in US. So we had the chance to have no supporting tour in Europe. So everything is different. Everything changed. And we thought it was the right time to face a formula that we never faced before because we always produced full albums. And we always produce albums that are a sort of concept inspired by a movie and by some philosophers and so on. But we always used to develop a story in 9, 12 songs. That is a formula very different from developing a story in 2 songs because you have to produce something that is still organic, that still gives to the listener all the elements that are crucial for your identity, but you have a very short time. On the same time, you have not to consider I call it the tiring factor, the listening fatigue, because when you're working on a short time, sound can be different, the arrangement of the song can be different, but it's like comparing a movie to a TV show. On a movie, you have to put all the same elements together, but you have just 1 hour, 1 hour and a half 2 hour if you are talking about superheroes, but it's very different from having first season with 10 episodes, second season with 20 episodes. It's harder and it's simpler. It depends from the point of view. For sure, it's very different for us. It's the first time we do something so short, and we work on it with a very different mind and a very different way from what we are used to.
Yeah, well, what I've always admired about the Hideous Divinity catalog is because when you like look at Cobra Verde or like even Simulacrum or any of the four full length albums, you have this sort of like EP that almost is kind of like, I call it like the trailer, because I've always thought that your albums are kind of cinematic in a way where I'm always wondering
Yeah.
what is the lyrics going to address, what is the concept of each album, and then you kind of have like LB426, and it does seem like it is bracing us for another impact of Hideous Divinity in the near future.
Okay. This time it's really clear what we are inspired by.
Yeah.
LV426 is the planet of aliens. So this is really strongly inspired by our readings of the story of Newt, of this young girl trying to survive in her purity, hunted by this dark monster that actually killed everyone but her, but the only one able to build up a fortress that actually looks like the room of a girl. It's crazy because everyone in the planet was somehow trained to face tough situations, except the children. And the one who survived is the one able to keep her doll in her hand and to build up a fortress of what's important for a girl. So in our vision of this story, that of course is inspired by the movie, but it's not just the storytelling of the movie. It would be pointless, it would be unnecessary. I think it would be illegal too. But it's our interpretation of this story that can be read as the purity of a child haunted by the violence and the violent reality of adulthood. We have this girl that try to escape, that try to keep her alive and not to be reached by this new violent and sad reality that haunts her all around her world, because that reality is all she knew of all the world, or in the aliens world, the worlds possible for a girl. So she's continually hunted, and in the end we know what's gonna happen, but it's not the point. This is what inspired us. As you said, all our albums are kind of cinematic because we are always being inspired by a movie. With the first album, Obeisance Rising, we've been inspired by The Elite. With the second album, Cobra Verde, we've been inspired by Cobra Verde itself, the movie. Then with Advenians, Videodrome, Simulacrum, Lost Highways. But the idea of doing something about alien was always in our mind, but it was strange because we didn't want to talk about all this gargantuesque world. It is so big, it has so many things to talk about. So we always said not there was always something that made us think, no, it's too much to talk about in one album. But if we have to do an EP, it is short, then we can look to just one phase of this enormous reality. And we decided to focus on the relation between Newt and the xenomorph himself. So we have these two songs, these two original songs, one, Acheron Stream of War, which lyrics are about this escaping and trying to survive from the noises and the images that she still has in mind. Because as she said in the lyrics and in the movie itself, Casey the doll has no nightmare in her head, but she's only made of plastic. Instead, she is made of flesh, and flesh starts becoming living in a nightmare, having a nightmare in her mind. So it's a sort of formation of a sad adult from a happy girl. Of course, it's a death metal album, so our vision is not positive, but we try not to make it stupid. On the other hand, we have the xenomorph that is not evil. It's as pure as nude, but she actually is pure in a very different way. So this clash between this two reality, between this two purity, made us think about a lot of stuff, and we decided to put it in this EP that we're very glad about, and we hope that we've been able to tell the story that we had in our mind.
Mm-hmm. Do you, because being that your music is very inspired by movies that you see, and a lot, like, I love how art inspires your art in a way, and do you always like think of these concepts before you even start writing, or do these concepts maybe come into play as more riffs are being thrown around and you have more song structures already in front of you?
Well, actually, we think a lot before starting composing new music, and we think a lot and we listen to a lot of music from the past and from the present, because we always keep in mind that, yes, of course, music is something that tries to put itself out of time and to be eternal. Okay, a good album from 20 or 30 years ago is something immortal that you can listen to it even in the next 50 years. But at the same time, we have to keep our eyes open for our reality, for what happens around us. There are a lot of good bands, and you can actually learn from everyone. So we listen a lot, and we try to understand what is the habitat in which we are going to tell our stories. Because you have to choose wisely the form of what you're going to tell if you want it to be understood from the listeners. At the same time, our main composer, Enrico Schettino, our guitarist, the founder of Hideous Divinity, is a very cognitive one. He's always thinking, building, destroying new ideas, and you can tell when he's gonna show us some new ideas for a song, when he start looking like something about to explode. And you can tell that he, and then we, think a lot before even composing music about what it's going to be about. So the ideas that we want to spread with the music itself, and how it has to sound the music itself. Of course, during the composition and the arrangement, it can happen that something that was supposed to be part of this album say, okay, it's not organic with the rest of the album, or the main opera, the main frame of what we're doing. So we're gonna take it out, and then we're gonna use it for the next album. It happened in the past, and we are full of things that we just stopped saying, okay, maybe we're going to use it again in the future. But if there are not the conditions in which that kind of riffing, that kind of song fits with the rest of the production, probably it's going to just wait for better times. But usually we have a clear idea what we're going to do before starting doing it. We like to work this way because, as you said, we try to keep and we try to push it even forward, this aspect of cinematic approach to music. When you produce a movie, you don't start acting and then you do a movie. Usually musicians like to start jamming and then let's see what happens. But and I'm not saying that this is a bad way of working. This can be a good way of working, but it reminds me more theater of some kind of experimental theater is improvisation, and then you arrange in a solid form. But we like to see to look at our music like a movie. So you have to have in mind what you are gonna say, how you are gonna say it, and most of all, why you are gonna say it. So if there is not sequence, what, why, and then how, I think you're gonna do something that maybe can be enjoyable, can be even epic, but it's not the way we're used to work. We are very nerdy, we can say it. we are some kind of death metal nerds.
Like many of them are. I've always said that if metal subgenres were the clique in high school, the death metal kids would be the nerds. Um, but uh, but but you know, it's interesting that you have these inspirations. But does your personal life or your personal experience also maybe influence the lyricism or the music, or has music always been a means of escape, and maybe you feel like you're portraying the characters in a similar way that the movies are portraying them?
Nice question. Actually, is the first. We are inspired by a movie, but there's a reason why a movie inspires you. We are not telling a story that is already told. We see a movie or we read a book that inspires us something new. But why? Because it resonates with something that you have to tell. Or maybe you have to sing it, or in my case, to shout it, because it's impossible to tell it in word. So, of course, when we do our music, we are not putting in music some character. We are putting in music our emotions and our problems. Sometimes our lyrics, even if inside, well, not sometimes, always, we can rely to what we write. Maybe for something that happened in our life, or maybe for something that happening in our head. But if we write it down, if we sing about it, it's always something that is true. You know, a lot of time death stars say, "Oh, we are just telling an horror movie story. Oh, you don't have to keep it as something real because it's just a story, it's just an horror movie." Like trying to keep distance from their lyrics. This is not our case. In our music, you can see 110% what is in our mind, and maybe it's not beautiful, but I'm not sorry for not being beautiful. Our mind could be very, very fucked up if we had not this way to deal with it. Yeah. There are things in our mind that are not good. Okay, we are human. We could be a problem for everyone else, or we could try to put it in music and maybe deal with it. When we worked on the lyrics and the music, but let's talk about lyrics from Simulacrum, for example. At least I was facing a very terrible time in my life, and you can read it in my contribution to the lyrics, because we write the lyrics, Enrico Schettino and the other Enrico, that's me. So Enrico Age, Enrico Schettino, we work on the lyrics, always starting from, I like to keep it this way, from something that Enrico brings to me. He said, okay, I wrote these lyrics, and then I start working on it, adding and cutting and repeating, and it is beautiful because I work starting from something that someone else wrote. It gives you some point of view even on your problems that maybe you didn't have, and then you can produce even more. But I can read on it that the lyrics from Simulacrum has been influenced by the story, by the movie, and by my actual problems of the time. This time is different. This time is some problem that is not what I'm facing now, what we are facing now, but something that is more deep and everyone can relate to. When we talk about Newt facing the xenomorph, of course, none of us, fortunately, haven't faced a xenomorph. We would not be here to talk about this. But every one of us has been, at least one time in his life, a little girl running from a dark monster. What the fuck is that dark monster? What does it represent? The answer is inside everyone, and the answer is different each from everyone. And probably the answer is wrong. It's not, I don't care. The problem is that we have this urge to scream about it. That's what we did. Mm-hmm. So, yes, we are telling a story, a fictional story, but it's a story that is 100% real.
It's metaphorical. It's a metaphor.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And then the final question I wanted to ask you is because as somebody who has seen Hideous Divinity live before, first of all, it's always an amazing experience. But, you know, I always like it when an artist does like a rundown of their catalog. So, you know, I would like to see stuff of like Obsidian's Rising or, you know, Cobra Verde or, you know, Simulacrum. So like when you're bringing in multiple songs from different albums and bringing a set list together, do you almost feel like that maybe changes the narrative of what you're trying to express in a live setting?
I love this question. Thank you. Because absolutely, yes. When you debut and rebuild a track list, even mixing track lists from different albums, we faced this problem. Okay, what's the mood of this song? What's the meaning of putting it here before this other song? It's not only to put the best songs and put it together. Otherwise, our live show will be just the sum of the singles that we choose for each album. And actually, it's not like this. What does it mean? It means that if we have 1 hour set, we can build another story that is different from every other album. If we have 30 minutes, we have to build another story again. And every song puts the listener that wants to hear, that wants to listen. And when we are able to communicate in the right way, puts the listener in a certain mood. Then we have to keep in mind what is going to happen next. And again, maybe the words will tell a story that is, but the meanings of those words have to tell a story that, once again, has to be organic for this particular show. When we compile the track list for every tour, we always keep in mind this kind of problem. We don't like to change the track list during the tour, actually. When we have a track list for one tour, is that given track list for every gigs. Usually, if we have some extra time, we can put some songs here and there, but we work very hard on putting the songs together for a tour as hard as we will do for composing a new album. We have a lot of pre-production even for tours. Of course, you always keep an eye for the last album because it's also
Yeah.
promotion. But every show has to be different. We like to think to our album like movies, but we like to think to our shows like theater.
Yep.
So you produce some direction, scenography, and acting for that production that is gonna change next time. So you have to work hard for every given situation because it must be different from other media. A CD is something, MP3 is something else, live set is something different, and in this year, live set via streaming is something even different. When we tried to do some live streaming with the Isolation Fest for the Century Media, we tried to give something different. It wasn't just to have a camera looking at myself that I sing. Okay, well, it will be poor. It will be nothing. You have to consider this and you have to work on this. So yes, every song is a single step. You have to understand very well where these steps are gonna go, so you can build a full path.
Yeah, I think the future for Hideous Divinity is you need to come to New York City and we need to make a death metal Broadway musical. Let's do it.
Ah, it will be great.
Honestly,
I would love it. I would love it. I am as a day job. I am a phoniatrician. I am a doctor of voice. So the 90% of my patients are singers, actors, and so on. And between the singers, my favorite patients are musical singers because they work on themselves in a very similar way to what we do with our music.
Oh,
so this idea of having a Broadway show based on this fucking music, not based on, but with this music, it will be so beautiful. Maybe strange, but who cares?
All art is strange at first.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for a great conversation. Is there just anything else with Hideous Divinity that you would like to promote with the release of LV426, or when this godforsaken virus that I'm not naming on my outlet is finally behind us, we'll be seeing Hideous Divinity on the road quite a bit, right?
Oh, you can bet. When, and I will not say when everything is over, because it could take a long time, but when everything will be safe, we will meet again on the road, on stage. And meanwhile, keep an eye, keep a ear, and keep your heart on music, because it's the center and the only thing that really matters. So we are still producing music, we are working on new music, and no matter how, we will always produce new stuff. And we can't wait to bring our music live again in Europe, in US, in Canada, in Australia, everywhere. There is someone that wants to hear to our problems, because we need to scream our fucking minds.
Exactly. This is the time for death metal more than ever. Death metal is going to death metal is going to be the historical soundtrack to the times that we're currently in.
For sure. So we try to do our contribution to this soundtrack.
Yeah.
We're still thinking about movies. No, it's reality. I prefer the movies.
Yeah. Same. I couldn't agree more. But thank you so much, everybody. Enrico of Hideous Divinity, LV426, coming out very soon. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We will see you next time.